Welcome, you all. This is Baron Baptiste, and welcome to Disrupt the Drift, the place where we can tell the truth and the truth can be told. David, how you doing?
Always fantastic when I'm hanging out with you, my friend.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about being a rebel in life or a conformist. And I was I saw this little snippet somewhere on YouTube, and this speaker was talking about, he was saying you should be a rebel because if you're a conformist, you're going along to getting along. I'm paraphrasing, going along to get along, fitting in. And then in that world of conformity, you lose yourself or you've lost yourself. And then to be a rebel is to do something different. To be a rebel opens up a different. What's your take on it?
I think there are two kinds of rebels. One is a conforming rebel, and that, in my opinion, means that you're not thinking for yourself. You're allowing other people to cause your rebel, whatever mindset or behavior. The other one is, and the first person that comes to mind is Jesus as a rebel. And here's what the definition of rebel, there's several definitions in the dictionary, but to resist or defy an authority or a generally accepted convention. Jesus came, we were talking about this earlier, Jesus came not to destroy the laws, but to fulfill them. So to be a rebel means that he had to go beyond what the laws, especially the Judaic laws of the time, of which there are about 700 different things you have to obey. He came to free people from having to live in the captivity of all these laws, to worship in spirit and in truth.
Living
ritualistically.
like
That's a great way of putting it.
Or rituals and superficial kind of outer formations rather than living it within yourself. So it becomes a living principle versus some external thing you're conforming to, but it's outside of you.
Yes.
The other thing with rebel that comes to mind, I like what you said about there's two types of rebels. So there's like the Jesus who is calling out hypocrisy, calling out pretense, calling out kind of the fraudulent ways of preachers or a lot of teachers, leaders who are holding up the Bible, or you could go to any kind of discipline or any kind of religion that people are like holding up a certain pretense. And Jesus was calling all that out. And that type of rebellion where you don't go along as a conformist. But then there's another kind of rebel that to me is they're still in a reaction, right? They're reacting to the status quo, and then that has them rebel, but then they conform. The rebel becomes a conformist just to another group. I remember growing up in San Francisco, you have the punk rockers, or you have all these different kind of groups. You see they're in rebellion and they're being to be different, and yet they're just joining a different groupthink. They're conforming to the other group of rebels. You can see it in the social justice warriors of today are like that. Like they're the activists and the kind of woke social justice warriors. But they all think the same. They all are speaking from the same textbook, the same kind of words, but they're like, you can tell they're a part of a group think. So they're rebelling, but they've conformed to a kind of group think. Does that make sense? And then you don't actually become different. You become just more of the same, just a different form of it.
Yeah, it goes toward the idea of a destructive rebel as opposed to a creative rebel. And when you say a person conforms to rebelling, it sounds like a contradiction of ideas, but it's not, because it becomes a force of others acting upon your life, causing, if you take a look at the riots of the summer of a few years ago, and these people that would collect together in places where they would try to burn down federal courthouses, and they would go after the police stations, what are the police stations? The police stations are that thin blue line between chaos and peace. And so the destructive rebels are not actually acting in a rebellion that is based upon conscious choices that they're making. They're actually abandoning. And Matthias Desmet wrote a book about it called about mass formation psychosis. That kind of rebellion is a form of psychosis that you allow, as you said, you allow people to influence you, and then you become like the mice that all work together, that are like the Pied Piper, and he led the mice down into the sea. And this is what happens. But creative rebels, and I'll tell you right now, give me a creative rebel any day. Give me a rebel,
Hmm.
a person who is not willing to conform for whatever reason. John the Baptist, a creative rebel. He went out into the wilderness. He lived off of locusts and honey. He knew where his fate was going to be. He could see it. And creative rebels oftentimes meet with terrible ends. They're persecuted and they are maligned and they're spoken badly about. But at the same time, the creative rebels, I think even Steve Jobs did a commercial about rebels. He was a rebel. He was a creative rebel. And look with the Apple computers and the Apple
Hmm.
phones that we're using now,
iPhones and
out of
yeah.
all
Hmm.
of the nonsense. Now, Bill Gates, the other side of that, he's a conformist rebel, but to rebel against what is right and true and good, that's really crazy, to rebel against what's real and what's right, as opposed to going toward what's right and real. So anyway, any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that if you look at people's lives, right, where they're from childhood, they do everything you're supposed to do conventionally. You go to school and then yeah, you start on grade school and then you go through college and then you get the job that you become what you're supposed to do in life. And then they hit a point in life, people that have something in them that is got a rebel in them, they hit a point where call it a midlife crisis or call it a crucible point, crucible moment where they realize their life, they're living someone else's life. Maybe it was what their parents inserted in them. It's what society inserted and imposed. And then they wake up and they're like, I'm living a life that is not consistent with who I am, who I was born to be. And they have some kind of reckoning, sometimes it takes tremendous pain or loss or sickness or something to cause this crucible point. And maybe not. Maybe it's even through, you can wake up through inspiration or through desperation, but they hit some point of desperation, which is typically what I've seen happens for people. But sometimes through inspiration, right? You hit a point and you just, but my life's become bleak. It's become empty. It's become meaningless. And it's because I've conformed to something in life that has taken me away from my life, my natural flow, a natural intuitive inclination. But there's something about, look, this is for the listeners here. We all at a certain point have to wake up and see, where are you conforming in your life that is stopping you, limiting you. And it actually, if you get underneath it, is it actually driven by fear? Is it driven by resentment? Or are you rebelling? Have you been rebelling in the other way where you've been doing things unconsciously, but doing things, living your life in a way that is in opposition to convention, but it still has gotten you to a place that's bleak, empty, angry, malevolent, bitter, and yet you're still in the same place. You've conformed in your rebellion to still the status quo. And it's like it takes something in yourself. You have to dig deeper or something. You have to look at, where is your pride keeping you stuck? And there's always that, what is it? The pride before the fall.
Mm-hmm.
That our pride, our ego blinds us. And in rebellion often is accompanied by resentment, or resentment had us rebel against our parents, against society, against authority, in such a way though that you're left this resentment. You're punishing someone. Maybe you're punishing your parents. Maybe you're punishing God. Maybe you're punishing the man, but yet you're punishing yourself at the end of the day. because it's your life. It's no one else's life. So if you're in some kind of rebellion, reactivity, and conforming or rebelling out of reactivity, out of fear, resentment, something that is, you're punishing someone outside of yourself or something outside of yourself. And at the end of the day, you're holding a sword over your own head.
Yeah. Well, listen, we all want to be loved and accepted and recognized. And one of the worst things that happens to children is that they are set up to seek the approval of parents or authority figures. And if we talk about going to school and bringing the teacher an apple or whatever it used to be a long time ago, we are oriented, I think, spiritually around gaining acceptance and approval. And as a result of that natural orientation, and again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be loved or approved of or accepted or recognized, but it can be contaminated with a feeling that goes along with that, and that's injected into your relationships with people of rejection. Okay, so conformity oftentimes becomes a side effect of not wanting to be rejected, but accepted.
Yeah, to look good, not look foolish in the eyes of all the people around you in your world that you are seeking the acceptance, to look good, not look foolish. That's driving something, right? The people pleasing.
Yeah.
The fawning. I saw an article recently where a psychologist or somewhere in the world of psychology where they've added a new word to the fight and flight response. Fight and flight is, what is it? To flee, fight, or freeze. Fight, flee, or freeze. They've added a new word, which is fawn. To fawn.
Interesting.
As a survival mechanism. And fawn, my understanding of the word fawn is to fit in, to get people's approval as a way of surviving in life. Because if you get rejected from the tribe, that comes with a big cost.
Again,
Yeah, it's dangerous.
it's interesting that you say the word tribe, because tribe is, in my opinion, the very essence of conformity. When you're part of a tribe, what does the tribe expect from you?
Yeah.
It expects loyalty. It expects fealty. It expects you to follow the rules and play by the rules. It doesn't matter what kind of tribe that is. It could be a tribe in the darkest jungles of Brazil, or it could be a tribe in your local university. You try to climb out of that tribe. And I remember a story as I was reading to my children back when I was homeschooling them about missionaries that went to find this tribe in the darkest jungles of Brazil that had not been contacted by outside world people. They tried to bring the gospel to this tribe, and the tribe literally tried to kill them, and they ran them off. But there was one
smart tribe.
But
maybe.
There was one member of the tribe as they were packing up to leave that emerged from the jungle, and they asked this person, "Why are you here? We know that you're risking your life to be here." And that what's interesting is that the native explained to them, "My gods are all gods of vengeance. Like your God is a God of forgiveness." This is as much as he needed to understand. And again, I don't like people that walk around with the Bible under their arm and always use the Bible as their authority.
Bible thumpers.
I don't like people like that generally. But it was a beautiful example of the power of an idea to liberate somebody from conformity. You've got to have something from which to transfer your allegiance in order to become free. Now, and what is that?
Outside of the tribe.
And what is that? It's the truth. If you know the truth, it makes you free. So whether or not you want to know the truth is the crux of the whole issue. You don't want to know the truth. You must stay as a conformist and in that conformity and rebellion, because every tribe that has conformity at the core of it is rebelling against another tribe that's trying to impose itself upon them. It's a strange dichotomy of an idea. It's a strange contradiction of thoughts, but at the same time, people that are convinced against their will are of the same opinion still, no matter what you try to tell somebody something that they don't
Wait,
want
say
to
that.
hear.
Say that again.
People convinced against their will are of the same opinion still.
Mm-hmm.
That's still
Mm-hmm.
down in
Yeah.
deep down in them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you have, and I was thinking about what you were just saying. In the story of Jesus, there was a creative rebel, and then there was the destructive rebel, and that was Judas.
Mm-hmm.
And so Judas sought to use Jesus for his own personal
Mm-hmm.
agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so he
Mm-hmm.
saw what Jesus was doing, and he thought, okay, I can bring down the Roman Empire with this guy. But at the same time, there was a knife in Jesus's back already. Jesus knew this all along. How many of
Yeah.
us have Judas friends?
Yeah.
How many of us have people that will throw us under the bus as soon
Yeah.
as they get the opportunity, if we are trying to break away from the groupthink, from the mass formation?
Yeah, it's very good. It's very subtle too, right? Those kind of friends,
It can be.
or
It
they're
can be
they're
very
actually
subtle.
fiends. You take out
Yeah.
the R,
Yes.
and but it's a wisdom that I think we all need to come to as we're growing within ourselves. That those kind of friends, fiends, you start having eyes for it, and those kind of friends drop away. And then when you have the wisdom, you recognize it before you let those type of people get too close inside of your world. And I think the conformist thing in what you're speaking to here, the conformist in our current world, it's if you step out of the conformity of groupthink, it's dangerous. How does that show up in life? So you self-censor. You don't speak up. You're going along. Maybe you're saying the right things. It's fawning, right? You are saying the right things to look good, to not be attacked. And I get some people are in work situations, or their careers are at stake, or their family will reject them. But if you don't speak up in truth of the truth that's given to you, what does that cost you?
Everything.
Like, what does it cost you? Like, that's really what you got to get to, is what is it costing you conforming and self-censoring and going along? And it costs you everything. It costs you love. It costs you freedom. It costs you power. It costs you your natural self-expression in life. And it costs you, though, greater than that, it costs you your health.
Yeah.
But it costs you your life, because you're living a life that's not true. It's built on a lie. And can't give anything other than anguish and depression and despair. And you got to get to, you are designed to be free as a human being. And when you're living free, will that cost you something? Yes. But look at what it's costing you. It's costing you what you actually don't want in life.
Mm.
It costs you the very thing that you wake up with. When in those moments when you're just with yourself, standing in the mirror, you're aware that you're not connected to something greater than yourself, because the something greater than yourself, call it what you want, your conscience, God, the God source, higher source. You're doubting that higher guidance, that conscience. You're doubting that which is actually your life source. So when you're living and you're depleted, you're exhausted, you're not living congruent. You're not living true. You're disconnected from that inner true north.
I'll give
your
you
northern star. Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
When you say you're not congruent, think about the idea of just your tires on your car. And when your tire is out of alignment, it wears out very quickly. Just a little tiny bit of unalignment destroys your car and your tires, and it can destroy the front end of your car, literally. Just think about that. The little tiny deviations, because everything needs to be in a proper state in order for success to occur. Now, sometimes people can have success in life in spite of a lot of things, but at the same time, I ask those who are willing to question themselves, what is your confidence in? See, what is,
Mhm.
how do you function on a daily basis and based on what kind of knowing? Now, is it group knowing? Because I know a lot of people always say, I wonder what so and so would say. Then they reference everything to other people. That's a big
Yeah.
mistake. Although
Yeah.
you can learn from other people's mistakes by doing that and saying, oh, okay, I see what you did wrong or
Yeah.
where you went sideways. But the other side of that is when you talk about something above you, something higher. Let me read to you Luke 12:12. Luke 12:12. When you are brought before the synagogues, rulers, and authorities, do not worry about how you will defend yourselves or what you will say.
Mhm.
For at that time, the Holy Spirit will teach you what you should say.
That's
Now, see,
powerful.
what do
That's
you put
trust.
your confidence in?
Yeah.
What do you put your with knowing in? Now, of course,
Mm.
if you're going to go into court, you better have a good lawyer and they better know what they're doing. But at the same time, when you're dealing with everyday life situations, what's more powerful than intuition? What's more powerful than that connection with the infinite? What's more powerful than trusting what it is that made you? Imagine we don't come into this world with a user's manual. We
Yeah.
learn from experience. And if we don't learn from experience, guess what? We're doomed to repeat it. If you take a lesson from everything that happens to you in your life and you cross reference with other people and with other information, and when you go back to the source,
Mm.
and this is what Luke 12:12 is telling you when you're brought before the synagogues, with people in general, don't worry about what you're going to say. I usually don't. In my life, when you talk about people that walk around with a Bible in their hand, if you're going to give a speech, you don't need a Bible in your hand to reference. You're not going to do it anyway. It's just there as it's like a Linus in Charlie Brown. It's his comfort blanket. It's his
Mhm.
blankie. You don't need that Bible. You got what the Bible has in you. And that's what Jesus said to worship in spirit and in truth. It's already there. You just have to
Mhm.
give voice to it and you have to have a confidence in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. There's something about trusting yourself. And it's more than that in my experience. It's like faith in something greater, faith in God, and having that you're living in faith, living as though things, something greater, this God force, whatever you want to call it, has your back. And you're living in faith. And then you're trusting the inner promptings that you're getting. You're trusting the promptings of your conscience, the promptings of that inner light, and it's connected to something greater. And you're walking through life with grace, as though grace is a presence and it's connected to you're trusting yourself in these inner promptings moment to moment as you walk through life each and every day. And when you doubt that, that's when you are actually rebelling against your own inner knowing. And that rebellion takes you down a path. And there's that Turkish proverb that no matter how far down a wrong path you go, turn back. And to be awake enough and have the awareness of yourself enough to know when you're rebelling against or doubting that inner prompting of the spirit, the inner prompting of the light, the heart, the whatever you want to call it. But it reminds me of like when I was a kid, my parents didn't put much value in school.
Hmm.
My dad wasn't, neither of my parents came from education. So my dad would send me to school every day and would say, you need to go to school because you have to legally. And so I would go to school, but my dad would always send me, he's more than whatever they're going to teach you, you don't need, it's not going to be that important, but see what they give you. He'd say, you want life experience. See what they have to teach you, but don't let education get in the way of your uh, success in life, kind of thing. And so it was interesting because on one hand, I had to conform and go to school. On the other hand, I had my father's voice in my head. You can rebel against this, and I chose the rebellious path.
Mm.
So I was never good at school. I would try to go along to get along, but I always had this awareness of I wasn't a conformist there. Then fast forward when I was in my early 20s, at a certain point, I was resentful toward my parents because I'm like, oh, they didn't set me up
Mm.
properly in life.
Mm.
I see everyone else, that's conformed to convention and to be successful. I needed this education. I needed the conventional way. And I felt very lost at that point in my life and without purpose.
Mm.
But then I realized beyond that, I actually forgave my father, forgave my parents and I had the experience of being forgiven in myself. And suddenly it was like 1,000-pound weighted jacket just
Mm.
dropped off of me.
Mhm.
And I suddenly realized, wow, no, actually, I'm free to discover
Yeah.
my own innovativeness, my own creativity,
Yeah.
my own, what am I interested in, and then learn about it. And then I started, as I was working, getting out in the workforce, and I was surrounded by a lot of smart people who had the college degrees. And I was like, they're actually not that smart. They're book smart, but they don't have the common sense, not necessarily. And then the majority of them will tell you whatever they got educated in, they're not using in practical ways in life. They're having to learn whatever they're doing in their work,
Well,
in their life,
let's talk about that.
in current time.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about that for a second,
Yeah.
because the word
Yeah.
educate comes from the Latin, if I'm not mistaken, educere, which means to bring forth from within. So if you're being filled like a sausage with external bits
Like
and
a sausage
pieces,
skin being stuffed
right?
with knowledge and information. And yeah.
That's not education.
Yeah.
That's programming.
Yeah.
And there's a saying which I love, which is we're all born to succeed, but we're programmed to fail. And so
Yeah.
what real education does is it liberates people to have that connection with that inner self, with that inner voice. And here's what Matthew 10:20 says: "For it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you."
Yeah.
This is
It's
in
beautiful.
complement to Luke
Yeah.
12:12. Don't worry about what you'll say. But unfortunately, the world sets us up. So we're born to
Mhm.
succeed. Every human being has the potential to be great. And then in the world that we come into, and again, this goes to who you trust and why you trust and who you are connected to from your relationships throughout the course of your life with your parents and your teachers are very important. Some teachers are very good and
Mhm.
some teachers are just robots. But for
Yeah.
me, I had a couple of great teachers when I was in high school. And one of them was an English teacher who allowed me to write poetry. Just whatever it is that the assignment was, I'm sitting there writing poetry and short stories. And the teacher was like, yeah, okay, you can do that. The same one was my art teachers. I was supposed to do certain assignments in art and I did my own thing. And the teacher said, you can do that. And he actually gave me my own art show one time in high school. But
Yeah.
those were the people that I got the most out of in
Yeah.
high school,
Yeah.
right? The people that were
Yeah.
supportive and helped me to to fulfill my own vision of whatever I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that,
I have memories of, yes, certain teachers who stood out and were really like a stand for just me and how I was wired to learn.
Mm.
And they had a patience about them,
mm,
and they would pull out in me the interest in the topic that they were
that's it.
teaching. I remember I had this math was something it was just over my head. But I remember I had this one math teacher that was so patient and would really draw out of me an understanding about numbers and how the basics of it and the fundamentals and how numbers joined into certain formations and equations and additions. That one teacher opened up a whole world for me. But in contrast, then you had teachers who were just imposing like just all this information, and I academically just wasn't wasn't wired like that. And I want to say, because if you look at the inner city, the education system, there's plenty of evidence that it's failed. And if you look at the inner cities or just the cities in the US full of homeless people or people addicted to fentanyl and heroin and meth and yada. I mean, in the tens or hundreds of thousands of people, it's an epidemic. But in part there, I see in those people, their parents failed them, the education system that maybe those parents relied on failed them because they weren't, they were set up to not, they were set up to fail. Now they're in life and they have no purpose, no sense of purpose, no sense of meaning, no sense of like how to even educate oneself. I'm self-educated. I needed to learn how to do that. But in a way, at least I had my parents that were instilled that in me. Don't trust the education system, trust yourself.
Mhm.
And you've got what it takes to do what you want to do in
Yeah.
life. But I see like a lot of these drug addicts and the homeless and the addicted to fentanyl and all, a lot of them are rebels. So they rebelled against a system, an educational system that didn't work. And though the wrong kind of people around them or the wrong environments where they went down this drug path and completely lost themselves, but they rebelled against something likely because they had an inner light, an inner intelligence, but the world and the environment didn't confirm that in them.
Yeah.
So they're left with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the brilliant episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza had this deep realization about doing things differently. And so he realized one day, I just have to do the opposite of what I've been doing because everything I've been doing has never worked. And as soon as he started doing the opposite of what he had been doing, he would just about start to do the same thing over again. And then he would say, no, I'm going to do something completely opposite. He started becoming very successful.
Yeah.
And in a way, the word repentance means to go a different direction. That's
Let go
kind
of
of literally what it means to repent, to go another direction, turn around, go a different direction.
yeah.
And so we've all been programmed to fail. And if you resent that programming, then it gets deeper. And then you feel the pain of not having fulfilled a life of meaning and purpose and what do you call it? Achievement. You feel the pain of
Accomplishment.
that.
Yeah.
And then what people go to do is kill that pain with
Yeah.
drugs and distractions and every kind
Yeah.
of thing. So it's a domino effect. But when you begin to realize that you can be a different person, you start to realize that you can turn around and start going in a different direction, that you can leave behind all of the nonsense that was put in you by people who actually didn't even know what they were doing anyway. I mean, do you think that
Yeah.
people out there, the influencers, do you really think they know what they're doing? And I would say, hell
They-
no, they don't know what they're doing.
They're PR campaign.
And why did Jesus say that, by the way?
Yeah.
Why did
Yeah.
Jesus, being hung on a cross, say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do? Because he could see it from where he was.
Yeah. It's very
Can't we
good.
all see it? Can't we all
Yeah.
see that nobody knew what they were doing? Let's just
Yeah.
let all that go and turn a corner.
Yeah, your influencers, it's all over social media. It's the influencers, the leaders, the gurus, the yada yada. They're all
Yeah.
kind of dangling carrots, but they're PR campaigning
Yeah.
for some agenda, but they don't really know what they're doing. And to wake up to, wait, what do I like? Are the answers within me?
Of
Is that
course.
like possible?
Yeah.
And start getting flat with yourself. Like, okay, I've trusted all these outside experts and voices, but wait, what if I started listening, trusting the inner promptings of my heart and soul, and trust the answers are within, and the answers are given within, and you'll be given what to say, you'll be given what to do as you wake up. You have a light on your path. And what I've seen in my life is when I get present, just get present. And then in the presence, when I get present, I'm in the presence of something greater. And the presence of something greater gives me guidance. And then there's light on my path. And I may only see, it's just the one next step to take. And that one next step to take, if you're really following the inner promptings, is probably a scary one because it starts to break up the mold it starts to disrupt the drifting along.
Mhm.
And then you're given just the next step. You take that step, and maybe it's a scary one. It confronts your inner fear, it confronts your identity. But you take that step, and then you're given the next step or steps to take. Maybe you're given a vision of what Jesus said, people without vision perish.
Mm.
And I think when you really get present, and you're present to a presence, a benevolent presence, you start walking a different path. And I love that repentance is taking a new path.
Turn around.
Yeah. And you've got to drop pride, and you've got to drop the concern for looking good and fitting in and not looking foolish and making mistakes. And that you have to confront that fear in yourself and come to something greater. So get present,
I'll
get
just
still.
I'll finish by
Meditation.
saying,
Yeah.
yeah, we were all born to succeed. Every single person
Yeah.
is born to succeed.
Yeah.
You're not born with "you're a loser"
Yeah.
stamped on your forehead, but
Yeah.
you're programmed to fail. And so all you have to do is see through the programming. That's
Yeah.
all you have to do is realize, I'm not living my own life. And if I turn a corner somewhere and I start going in a different direction, things will change. It will always
Yeah.
change.
You're given
It will.
purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. It changes. And what changes is you start to receive purpose in life, direction. Yeah. Very good. All right, you all. Thank you for listening thus far into the show. Please leave comments. If you're watching on YouTube, please, we love hearing your comments. Like the show. That supports it, pushes it out into the algorithms. If you'd like us to respond to your questions, we have a lot of questions, David, that have been sent in that I want to start getting to in some of the future episodes. But send any of your questions that you'd like us to respond to Disrupting the Drift at BaronBaptiste.com. Disrupting the Drift at BaronBaptiste.com. And until next time, stay true, keep disrupting the drift, and peace be with you.